Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Rising. We got Lauren back in the house.
Yes, so excited to be here.
Lots of good stuff in the show today. Dr. Joe is going to be here to explain whether, in fact, we are all living in a computer simulation. You definitely want to find out the answer to that one. Also, DNC has decided not to hold a climate debate. We've got to talk about that. Tulsi Gabbard is not happy about the debate selection criteria. Dig into all of that and more today on Rising. Lauren, what are you looking at?
So I'm watching the G7, which kicks off this weekend in France. It'll be the new UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's first meeting with world leaders, who started getting back together in the 70s for these types of meetings. The purpose of this annual meeting between Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States is traditionally to coordinate macroeconomic initiatives with the larger players on the world stage. The G7 countries represent the most advanced economies in the world and oversee over 50% of the world's GDP. So pretty powerful people in theory. And usually the leaders meet and decide to actually do something together. And we learn about this through an agreement. We learn about their agreements through a joint communique or statement that's issued right after. All the countries negotiate and agree upon the language, and from my experience in government, they are a pain to deal with. But this year, Macron has already announced that there will be no communique. Apparently, it's just too hard to get everybody to agree to anything in this age of nationalism. And as he put it, no one reads them anyways. We're living through a very deep crisis of democracy. But does that mean the whole meeting will be completely pointless? Can democracies not work together on anything anymore? I sure hope not. Listen, no one's expecting them to actually coordinate on economic policy. We can expect more from the world's central bankers who are meeting out in Jackson Hole this week. And they probably won't be agreeing on Brexit, trade, or climate change, any of the big topics. But there is a chance that they can do some good for Hong Kong. The Washington Post actually got it right this week in their editorial when they said, quote, "The G7 leaders must show China it will pay a price if it cracks down on Hong Kong." President Trump has been hesitant to say much regarding Hong Kong so far because of the ongoing trade negotiations with China. Individual Western countries have largely acted the same, with weak statements in support of the protesters, again for the fear of disrupting trade with China. But there can be power in numbers. This weekend's summit of G7 leaders offers an opportunity for these governments, including the United States, to send China a clear message. If you crush Hong Kong's democracy movement, there will be far-reaching and dire consequences. Together, the G7 leaders should agree to adopt punishing sanctions if China acts, including the immediate removal of Hong Kong's special economic status, which is what facilitates the flow of trade and investment into the mainland. China agreed to allow Hong Kong to be a democracy for at least 50 years. The G7 should at least come together and hold them to this promise and protect democracy in this part of the world.
Really interesting stuff, Lauren. I had completely forgotten that this would be Boris Johnson's first time with G7.
And that's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to watch the dynamic because he is of the similar vein of Trump as far as bucking sort of these international norms. Yes. And the last G7 meeting in Canada, Trump was the one pushing everyone into uncomfortable positions and not agreeing with pretty much anything that the rest of the world leaders wanted to do.
Right.
And now I feel like Boris Johnson will be his
a partner in crime.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that's troubling about this trend, I think it's really important that you highlight it, is we are at a time when some of the problems we're facing, some of the biggest problems, including climate change notably, are global crises where we need countries to be willing to work together and have some sort of structure for doing that. I know that makes some people uncomfortable, but that's the reality of the situation that we're in. So when you see these multilateral institutions just degrading and falling apart, it's a very troubling sign.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to see that each of these world leaders is not exactly polling well in their countries, individual countries. So they're all actually approaching this from a pretty weak political stance to begin with. And then you add on top of that the fact that they don't necessarily want to work together or see eye to eye on anything. And you kind of wonder why they're even getting together.
That's such a good point, that no matter where they've kind of fallen on the political spectrum, there's just so much frustration with where we are in this moment. I mean, the world is really at this sort of transition point, right? Where you could go in a number of different directions, and there's a lot of frustration with whoever happens to be in power at the moment. To see those dynamics play out on the world stage and what it means for all of us is really pretty fascinating.
A lot of the times we're only looking at the United States and our problems, but it's pretty much everywhere.
bright note there. Next on Rising. The governors running for president seem to be leaving the field. The president's flip-flopping on some major issues, shockingly. We'll tell you what those are.
And have the Dems rounded out their top 4 in the presidential pack? The Hill's editor-in-chief Bob Cusack joins us with a debrief. Stay tuned for more Rising.